Welcome back to another great episode of Inside Medical Malpractice, where today we're talking to Nova Scotia lawyer Ray Wagner. Ray is the founder and principal of Wagner's law firm in Halifax, and he's dedicated most of his 42 years of legal practice to representing injured plaintiffs with a focus on class action and medical negligence, with a special focus on birth trauma and personal injury. If you haven't listened to the longer podcast where Ray talks about malpractice and class action cases involving medical equipment errors, please do. It's a fascinating episode, and it's the fourth in a series of podcasts involving a discussion on the most common issues that result in malpractice lawsuits. And like other errors in healthcare, equipment errors are not only pervasive, they are sometimes devastating. And Ray has some really good stories and information to tell, as well as offer some advice to patients and doctors and nurses and lawyers about the most important thing he feels they should know about malpractice involving healthcare equipment. So don't miss it. But thanks so much, Ray. In this particular podcast, he's going to talk about himself. And I know you'll be all interested to hear what's behind the man who just talked in that other podcast. So again, Ray, welcome back. I'm delighted that you're here.
And thank you for inviting me, Chris, again. After the last discussion, I feel I'm still okay then.
Yeah, you're still okay. Yeah, we learned all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure this will be good. I'm interested to know the answers to all these questions because Ray and I do know each other on a personal and professional level, but not particularly well. So there's lots to learn. So first of all, I mean, if you've been practicing for 42 years in your legal practice, you, not too dissimilar from me, we're at a stage in our career where life is starting to perhaps look a little bit different, and we're looking forward to another phase of life. But right now, at this point in your life, and I guess you're probably 43 years now, are you not 42? Yeah, I think I pulled that from your website, and I maybe didn't update it like I should have. But just talk us through a typical day in the life of longtime Nova Scotia lawyer Ray Wagner.
Well, there's never a typical day, so that's part of it. But the most common, the most common day in the work day, and the most common, but it's always different. Before COVID, I spent an awful lot of time on the road, and we were in Toronto a lot on a particular file that we were doing almost every second week, and we were traveling throughout the four Atlantic provinces because that's where we do almost all our work, except for class proceedings. But now it's a little more. It got settled in with the COVID. Now we're out of COVID, I think, and so that typical day would be I'd rise generally around 6:30 is generally my time to get up. I generally have a breakfast here, maybe not. At home, and my typical thing will be flax with bran and some granola on top, so blended together with some berries. Yeah, well, that's my go-to. That's my go-to for breakfast. And yeah, or I come down here and get a muffin. That's not so healthy. Depending on what I like to work in the morning is my best time. I used to work in the evenings, but I find it just doesn't work for me. And so I spurt. I'll work certain times and break. For instance, often, especially in the summer, I'll work till I don't take lunch. I'll just because I don't take a lunch with me. I may do lunch once a week, maybe, and I don't. I'm in a practice where I'm not kind of taking people out to lunch, or people take me to lunch because it's just the nature of the business. My clients don't do that because they can't afford to do that, and they're all over the place. And then, usually, sometimes I'll break. Lately, I've been working till 5:30 without a break, but typically in the summertime more to 3:30, and then go home. And I work at night too. My mind's constantly going. I don't know if it's an ADD or a social dysfunctional thing, but even when I'm doing things that are recreational, I'm always thinking about something about the law, something about it. It's just I am totally dysfunctional. I think that's why retirement becomes so difficult for a person like me. And so I, and then and then I go home and have supper with my wife. She usually has activities, and we have six grandchildren now, so they're a big part of my life these days. And we're helping out with them. They're all young. The oldest is 8, the youngest is 1, or less than 1, 8 months. And so that's part of my life. The weekend we go out to the cottage, and I generally take one day a week. I say I'm not doing any legal work whatsoever. And I'm more prone these days to 2 days. But one day I just don't start reading reports. And that's where I find the most stressful is that I can read emails and know what's going on, but stress of reports. And then, I usually collapse at 9:30 at night, and go to the bed, and I like reading. I'm a little bit of fiction, a little bit of nonfiction. Read about Argonaut is one I'm reading, just finished, which is about a lady who entered the field of science and all the problems that she had as a woman in a man's field, and the great work that she's done. So I get it inspirational. I like I'm reading another book about the senses of animals and how that works and how they communicate and all the different perspectives. And so I'm a true lover of nature. So anything that comes in with that, I really enjoy it, and I enjoy a good fiction book too. So, and then I'm done. Put on my apparatus, my CPAP machine. You're really getting deep into my life now. Snore. So yeah, my rib cage has been much better ever since I got the CPAP machine. Yeah, because my wife kept elbowing me in the ribs every time I snored.
Well, there you go. Well, that's a great and very detailed answer to that question. I appreciate it. That's really good. I've eaten with you a couple times. I know when I was in Halifax, once we had lunch somewhere. You took me out for oysters, which I had honestly never had, and I don't think had since. And they were quite delicious. I thought I was 100% sure I was going to hate them, but you were buying, so I'm like, okay, I'll try them, but they were good. You and your seafood out there in Halifax is so good. Yes, so lucky. So, like, outside of reading and grandchildren, do you have other pastimes that you like to pursue? You also mentioned you love nature. Like, what do you do when you're not busy thinking about work or working?
Yeah, yeah, things that distract me. I mean, I love skiing. I don't get enough of it, and I don't ski in the Atlantic Canada because I can do big mountain skiing. I love that. Don't do much of that anymore. Biking, we do biking more for exercise because I used to run. I ran 3 marathons, about a half a dozen half marathons before I developed an illness that prevented me from that. And so I enjoyed that. So as I do biking, some boating, bushwhacking is something I like. Just getting out and getting in the shrubs and the thorns and everything else, and making the property look nice. Hiking is something I like. Two things that I really like. One, I'm really going to get into, and I'm really having a constant fight with my wife about this, whether we should spend money on it. But I want to build an observatory because I really have been a lifelong interest in astronomy. And I think I just got to have something for retirement. So that's something that we're coming. I'm getting closer to my side on that, but I haven't got there yet. And birds, I love birds. Birds, I have a passion for birds and identification of birds. Travel, I like. I got 6 grandchildren, as I mentioned. One thing that I don't do anymore, and that I did, and I then watched my daughter, youngest, play it, is soccer. I played soccer for decades. I started playing soccer when I was a kid and played it all the way through. I coached for 35 years. I don't coach anymore because my work with the travel, just I couldn't do it anymore because I didn't want to let the kids down because I wasn't there. And but I only coached women. I coached girls and women from ages 5 to age 60, and different levels. Some at elite level, some at a lower level, and so I really, really enjoyed that, and I really miss it. It was fun, and it was my passion sport. I don't watch hockey, football, or baseball or anything else. It's just soccer. The thing is I have not seen one single episode of Netflix. Not one single. Not even a series. I My wife cut the television back in October of 2019 because I wasn't watching it, so she cut it out of our budget. And, so I don't watch television, and it is a constant source of disconnection with. I'm often around a dinner table or with a group, and people are talking about what series you're watching. I, I don't know any of these series. I know Ted Lasso because I was in the town where that was filmed in Richmond, England, 2 months ago. And a beautiful town. So I saw all the iconic features, the pub and the green, whatever they call that, the greenery, where all the kids and sports are played and stuff like that. And the street's a beautiful town. So I do know about it, but I haven't seen it.
Well, I only brought it up because of soccer, because it's a soccer show. But why did you only coach women? Was that a choice, or did you just fall into it, or is that your favorite thing to do?
Yeah, well, I had three girls. My children, three girls. One's 39, one's 37, one's 28. Young one's still playing. And so I coached them because I had a lot of experience in soccer. I knew the game. I know the game. And so I coached them, and then it just. But even when I was a kid, I started coaching when I was 15, and my first team was under 9 girls. And it just, for whatever reason, I've never coached a boys' team. And it's not because of design, it's just the way it really happens. The same as I have 5 partners. I was a lone owner of the firm until last year. And I took on 5 partners in January. And guess what? They're all women.
And it works?
It works.
Good. Awesome. Awesome.
It always worked for me. I told a number of years ago when there was only 15 of us, we're more than double that now. But and there was another guy who was working here. It was he and I out of and there were 13 women. I told him one day, I said, one of these days you'll be a woman like the rest of us.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
If it,
That's good. So, next question. Tell me, what were you in your busy mind like as a child?
well, I go from really what my mother says. My mother, God bless her, is now deceased a couple of years ago, but she was a great woman, and she always embellished everything that I did. So the stories that I have are always great stories. But I think I was very active, very inquisitive, experimental. I love the outdoors. In those days, and this part of my passion for the outdoors, I think is where because that's the way I grew up. We got home from school, we got off our school clothes and went out with our grubs, and we played. We played sports. We wrestled. Men and women, we wrestled together. You don't see them doing that. Somebody's going to come over with clogging the back of the head if they catch you wrestling with a woman. But we did that, and we built forts. We climbed trees. We had the easy tree and the difficult tree. We had everything named. We had swings, and we just lived the outdoors until my mother bellowed out that it was time for her to come home, and she was such a loud voice, and you'd run home because otherwise she'd annoy the whole neighborhood. So I learned how to get back home pretty quick, have supper, and then dash back out until dark. And so I just lived in the outdoors, and that's really what it was. In sports, I played anything and joined any club. I, I just liked being out and about, and so I played baseball, hockey, soccer in my early days, and so I enjoyed all that.
How many, you mentioned your brothers and sisters. How many siblings did you have, and where are you in the lineup?
I'm the oldest, and I have 2 brothers. My youngest, unfortunately, died of complications from a pulmonary embolism back when he was 49, so that's a few years ago.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, but he has a living memory. He was also played soccer, and he coached too. And so we sponsor, and it's a tier 2 level tournament every year at the end of July, and it's massively a massive amount of teams go to it. It's the Bruce Wagner soccer tournament. We sponsor that tournament, and it's a living memory of him.
Oh, nice. What a great way to remember him. That's awesome. So, you mentioned like a surprising amount of little side hustles there and things that you enjoy and hobbies and stuff. How, if you weren't a lawyer, what career path would you have chosen?
Yeah, so I was kind of reflecting back, and in grade 9, the counselor asked me what I wanted to do, and I remember that I told him I wanted to be a geologist. Again, probably for the outdoors, I guess. I don't know what my motivation at that time, but I thought it was fascinating to be a geologist, to understand the earth. And then I kind of, in grade 12, in my book, it said that I was going to be a lawyer. Um, and you get your little bio, and in that it said Ray's gonna pursue a career in law, and I did.
And do you have an example before you? Like, was your dad a lawyer, or do you have uncles or friends? Or
No, I have nobody in my family at all. My father came from a farming family, and they're all working class individuals. I grew up in a duplex in a working class family, a very loving, giving family. My mom and dad, especially my dad, he never had much money in his pocket because he was always giving it away, and that's the way he was, and that's what made him feel good about life. And that's my mother was much the same as well. They just loved to give. They weren't takers, they were givers, and that was a big formulation in my life. And then I went into political science as an undergrad. I never finished my degree. I only have a law degree, and I hope I have a law degree because I've fooled a lot of people.
I hope so too. So just told a lot of people that you're a lawyer.
And I always had an interest in politics. I was really interested in politics. And again, moving around people, I loved people of all ages and backgrounds. I just loved people. And there was a great lady, Mary Smith from Ingonish, Cape Breton, and when I was doing campaigning stuff with leaders and stuff back in the 90s, but primarily 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. She was 85 at the time. She's now deceased. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I said, I introduced her to another person in the campaign trail. I said, this is my old friend, Mary. And she said, Ray, it's not old friend. It's long time friend.
Right. Good one.
So I never call anybody my old friend anymore. I learned a lesson. See, you don't want to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah, for sure. That doesn't sit well with a woman of any age, I don't think. That's really good. And like you're kind of coming to, I'm not going to say the end of your career, but you'll be transitioning. You won't be 9 to 5 in the office all day, every day, forever. What are you thinking for the next, 10 to 15 years of your life, and then the next 10 to 15 years after that?
Yeah, I always wanted to do something with learning. I always liked, I think that's, to me, and that's what I constantly learned to do and had to do is you do the knowledge and data dump every time you finish a case. But it's going on to the new case, which always kept you going, and the excitement of that. And to help people out, to me, it was, the primary thing, and I always tell the young lawyers, is never put yourself first. You're never first. Your client's first, always first. Very important. If you do good things for people, good things will happen to you. It may not seem to be intuitive, but it'll happen in a way. And so I think, mentoring, I think is because a lot of the lawyers, so we had a major transition in our office back in 2015. A lot of people left. All kinds of different reasons, and it was good for everybody. The people that left, it was good for them, and it was good for us. And everybody reestablished, and it was great. But the downside is that most of the people I have in the office are 10 years or under. So I can't go very far very fast. And so I do a lot of mentoring and I'll continue to do that. So I like that. Travel, love to travel. And I get an awful travel the rest of the year because of court. We got 4 jury trials scheduled between September 1st and December 15th. We got certification motions coming up. Yeah, we got a certification coming up this month that I have to argue a bunch of discoveries in July, a little bit of time in August. So it's brutal. So travel is that, I'll get back on my radar. And I think astronomy and back again, just enjoying the outdoors. I want to be able to identify shrubs and trees better than I can now. And because it makes you, I think there's a real connection. I believe that trees have a much more than just roots and trunk and leaves and branches. And they're heavily, to my mind, very medicinal. I enjoy being in the woods. And I think they do speak to you in their own particular way. So I'm not talking about mystic things or witchcraft or anything like that, but I think understanding of your environment, your people, your animals, the birds, the insects. I don't kill insects. I used to, my grandson, I have this little device that goes over and takes houseflies. It's a vacuum. It has a long tube on it. So you put it over the fly and it sucks it in. If you put it all the way down, it has a little fryer on there, a little electrical current that runs. And it fries the fly. Am I at the top? Yeah, well, I thought that was a good way to get rid of them. And, and it was. And I take them aside and dump them out. But then my grandson at the time, who was 4 at the time, says, Grandpa, why are you killing the fly? And I said, I thought to myself, why am I? So now I push it up a little bit. So I take it in. So now the fly, I'll take him with a vacuum. And he'll be still in the chamber, and I'll take him outside and let him free. But I swear the other day, about a month ago, the same friggin' fly was in there 3 times.
He's like, I'm not scared of that guy. He's not going to kill me. I can go back inside and eat some food and get some warmth and stay out of the rain and every other thing. I appreciate what you just said about the plants and the trees, and don't find it, woo-woo at all. I had the great fortune of growing up with a grandma from Kentucky who, because my background is Kentucky, Indiana, those are my roots. And my Grandma Lovely was her name. She didn't read, she didn't write, she had a grade 2 education. She was poor as poor could be, but she used to take us out into the woods and we'd pick mushrooms and plants, and the cure for a cold was mustard plaster and a hot sock wrapped around your neck. And, Vicks rub in your mouth and on your chest and on your feet, wrapped in hot socks and hot towels. And I just wish, I'm so sorry that I don't have all of her knowledge, every single thing, because even then becoming a nurse and kind of going down the more, traditional pharmaceutical medicinal route, if you just look back, there's so many things, so many medications that are rooted in nature, and maybe many more natural ways to cure your ills, your mental and physical health. And I'm so sorry that I didn't embody all that knowledge. I mean, I wasn't that old when I knew her, but I sure wish I knew what she knew. I do.
Yeah, we were took the family a number of years ago now to Machu Picchu, and we did the 3 night 4 day Inca Trail, and it's up a lot of climbing, hell of a lot of climbing. And my youngest has prone to asthma, and as we're climbing up this, they call it the Widowmaker, and it's literally about 2 kilometers on an angle, a 45-degree angle, no break, uphill, and it's amazingly tall. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating on the distance, but it's in 18-inch steps because they weren't. So we got halfway up, and the tour guide that was with us, my daughter was youngest, was having a lot of problems breathing. He said, come over here, and come over, and he put a couple peppermint plants. And he said, chew on this a bit. And I chewed on that a bit, and she was fine for the rest of it. Yeah. So, so much so I leave and we had somebody, I forget what you call them, but came around and brought us around our community and showed us all the things that we should be eating that are grown naturally. And, I didn't record a lot of that, and I want to do that again because I think there's, it makes a connection with nature, and you appreciate it so much more in the harm that we as humans cause to so many things.
I had a not dissimilar experience. I mentioned in the other podcast that I just traveled 3 months in Southeast Asia. And I was in Vietnam, and I got the snottiest of all snotty colds you can imagine. Like, I was so stuffed up, and my sinuses were so painful. And one morning, the waitress in the breakfast restaurant where we ate breakfast said the same thing. Just come here, she said. And her English wasn't very good, but she took a big wooden bucket and she went down by the river and she picked the whole bucket, like a gallon bucket full of herbs that she picked at the side of the river. And they were purple and they were green and they were feathery and they were thick leaved and they were stinky as hell. And she put me into a steam room and put the bucket over the pipe where the steam came out. And she just made me sit in there for 30 minutes, hot, like, I don't know, it was hot, Ray. I didn't think I was going to make the 30 minutes, but I did because she wouldn't let me come out. She just kept passing through. And this was done without a whole lot of English, between us. She was Vietnamese and I am what I am. But I'll tell you, at the end of that 30 minutes, I was cured. Like I was absolutely cured. And for me, like a sinusy thing like that can settle in for 7 or 10 days. And I was good the next day. And I was not only overwhelmed by her kindness. I mean, she didn't have to do that for me, but also, the knowledge that we just don't have, or we seem to have lost in part in some of our world anyway, that we don't just understand and use the natural methods of healing. Because our bodies really do such a good job of healing themselves, given the right tools. Okay, anyway, that's a bit off topic for me to tell my story. So let's get back to you.
No. Look, it's sharing. I said, I made something about you. That's important for this session, that I have something that I can take away.
Yeah, oh, good. So tell me, you talked just a minute ago about your like lawyering strategy, and I would imagine it's a life strategy to do good, and good things will come back to you. My next question was, what is your top strategy for success in life? Would you say it's that, or do you have another strategy that you've used to move yourself forward?
No, I really think that the life is an equation, and on one side of the equation is giving, and the other side is taking. And I want to get the quotient on the left side, on the giving, way in excess of what I have on the other side. And so, that's what I try to. That's one of the fundamental ways that I deal with life. If somebody does something good for me, I'm full of gratitude for it, for sure. But I'd much rather give, and I've done a lot of things in life where I've done random acts and I don't want to be patting myself on the back, I did a random act of kindness where a lady jammed her thumb into the door down the South Shore, and she was in excruciating pain, and so I made arrangements and brought her to the hospital and brought her stuff to her place the next day, and they're like, thank you, it's great. And I said, look, I thank you because what it gives me.
Nice. That's really nice and really touching. What a great way to live your life. Well, and I know that you're generous and kind like that. Like one time when I was in Halifax and you took Rick and I out for pizza or flatbread or something, we sat out on our deck and it was a Friday and we were staying the weekend. And I didn't know you that well. It was only like the first or second time I met you in person. And you were going to your cabin for your weekend and you invited us out for the weekend. And which was the kindest thing to do. And we didn't go because we had other plans, but Rick and I walked away and wow, that's so generous and so kind and such a nice offer. I mean, I could have been a serial killer at the time, but I wasn't. But I remember that kindness from you, Ray. I still do. And sometimes I think, I think I'm basically a kind person, but you can always step up your game and be really, go just above and beyond a little bit. And that's a good lesson for all of us. So thanks for sharing that. So what advice would you offer your younger self if you could go back now and have a chat with Ray at 9 or 12 or
Yeah. I think when I look back at regrets in my life, and I can think about them, it's the way I've treated people in certain situations, and they haunt me. They really do. When they inform me of how to behave now, and what I would go back to those specific circumstances. In terms of, I've had a great life. I've been extremely lucky. I really have. My parents didn't have a lot, but they did everything they could to make sure that I pursued whatever I wanted to, and it turned out to be law. And they've always supported me. I know that when I was around university eating one meal a day because I couldn't afford anything else, they would send up what they could, and in terms of money to help me out, so and they never complained, never asked for it back, never said a word about it. So, when I look back, I think some circumstances where I had sued somebody when I was just starting out my career, and it was a failed relationship not a personal one, but a professional one. And that still haunts me today, because I was so wrong to do that. And I think somehow they have dismissed people at times historically, and been treated them arrogantly, and I just don't reflect kindly on that. But I can say I've been very lucky, and I don't look back and make any regrets really. Uh, and But I learned from those, and those are good learning experiences for me.
yeah, good answer. Good answer. And I'm glad you don't have a life of regrets. I mean, I personally don't think you're a person who should. You've done a lot of good work. What, when people meet you or those who know you, what do they most often get wrong about you?
Yeah, so that was the toughest question that you had given me there to ask. And so what I did this morning, we had a lawyers meeting, the partners meeting. And so I passed around to the five of them. I said, this is the question. One of them's my daughter as well. I'm sure she'd have lots of things. And I said, what can you tell me about that? You answer this question for me, and I need it for this afternoon. And nobody came back.
Nobody had an answer?
Nobody came back. The way I look at myself and historically is, I have a lot of very good friends. A lot of people like me, and a lot of people dislike me. You either like me or you don't. There's no middle ground. And I've never asked the people that don't like me, that I don't want to hang around with, to really know, because I don't know why. But what people don't know about me, I don't know.
I think I can answer that question for you. Like from my perspective, like I wouldn't have known until today. Like I always knew you as a lawyer and a person of integrity, and I think I just innately understood your desire to help people. But I wouldn't have known the depth of that is how you live your life, and that is the most important strategy you have for success is helping people. And I wouldn't have known the depth of the pleasure that you get out of that. So I would have taken you as a more surface level, gentlemanly lawyer, but not really understood that was your driving force. I would have put you maybe like not judged you wrongly, but put you in a category of lawyers.
Well, I think that reminds me. Maybe you spurred kind of a thought that I had, and that is somehow that I'm a tough guy, and maybe tough and tough otherwise. And yeah, and I don't. As I mentioned earlier, I don't watch television, and I don't watch movies either. So I said, well, I'm flying over to London, and I said, you know what? I'm going to watch a movie. So I put on A Man Called Odo. Well, I'm blowing my nose. I'm crying like multiple times through the whole trip. And I said, you got to get a life here. This is just a freaking movie.
Oh God, was it a good movie? I haven't seen it yet, but I've read the book.
No, it's worth the watch. It's really very inspiring.
Well, since you're a reader and a sports guy, there's the author of the book that became the movie. I think his name's Frederick Backus, and he's Swedish, and he's got a whole series of books called Beartown, which is about hockey in Sweden, but also hockey in Canada. But they're great reads. They're just great stories. That was one thing I read on my 3 month East Asian, South Asian sojourn. It was lots of fun. Okay, so that's a good answer to that question. Like you're maybe softer than you seem, or more sensitive, and it's not just that. I'd say there's an integrity there that I didn't really fully understand until we had this conversation, and I'm appreciating very much. So just I was going to ask you about your favorite TV show, but you don't watch TV.
I give you my old ones if you want to know.
Yeah, okay. What's your old ones? What are they?
Well, old ones I used to like Get Smart because I thought it's slapstick comedy. I get buckled over with that stuff.
Ray, that is so far back.
That's so far. Beverly Hillbillies, how's that?
Oh my God.
Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so after that, I do watch television in one respect, and I'm a fanatic for English Premier League soccer and Champion League soccer, World Cup stuff. So I do have an Apple app that I can watch it, and I often watch it on this.
Oh, that's true.
So that's a true television watcher watching on a mini Apple device. That doesn't bother me. That's my television watching is that, and only some games you can watch them on.
Yeah, of course, I know. What is your favorite food?
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of sushi. I love sushi. Italian food, fusion. That's kind of stuff I like. But good fish and chips I'll eat. Of course, scallops I love. Lobster feed I can do a lot. Lobster feed. My mother would eat with her bare hands, which I can do now. A whole lobster without any utensils and eat it all.
Come on, that's a talent.
And if you want a demonstration, I'll show you that. Maybe come on, do a podcast of how to do it. And no wounds, no wounds.
That's a special talent. Like you could take that to the bank right there. What's your favorite song?
Song, music overall. I'm a big jazz fan. I like classical music. I like opera. I like choral music, believe it or not. And I like 60s, 70s, 80s music. Spanish guitar is one of my favorite, and classical guitar on the top of the list. But, favorite songs of all time, I think, throughout my life. I think I like a Rolling Stone. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan. That's a classic. Leonard Cohen, I love Leonard Cohen, Hallelujah. There'll be a couple kind of songs, I think, just classics. And I can think a lot of other songs that I like, but just in that genre. But it drives my wife crazy because we're driving places and I'm listening to jazz or classical music. She says, "Well, it's been on for half an hour. Can you put something else on?" So we'll have to do that. It's part of compromise.
Absolutely. We've both been married a long time and we understand that compromise thing very well. So one last question for you. Who's had a really important influence on your life, a real person or not otherwise? And what has that influence been?
Well, I think, Mahatma Gandhi was good, the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, and people like that. I was just trying to think way back in terms of, everybody likes the, Aristotle and Plato, and Plato, one of the famous statements of Plato, I say to everybody, say when they got lucky, I said, Plato said you had to be good to be lucky. So I like them because I find that it brings, they're talking, it's a different perspective. It's not about accumulation of wealth. It's not about being, building yourself up. It's all about how you treat others and the inspirational stuff and the joy, the book of joy, which I just finished reading. which is a fantastic book. Dalai Lama's getting a little bit of bad press, propagated by the Chinese because they stole Tibet and killed a lot of people when they did it. So they've been blasting out the media all around about that little tongue incident. But his messages are fantastic and inspirational, and how you can have joy in things. You can have, and what I tell people now, and maybe I'm starting to get a little kooky, but I say, people ask me at the coffee shop, I said, you having a good day, Ray? And I said, every day is a good day, even when it's a bad day. Every day is a good day. Because even bad things that happen, death, terrible thing, but you can see inspiration about that, and you can find joy in it, and you just have to find that joy, that live a good life, been good people, and learn good lessons from them. Like my mother would be a great influence for me. I'm a manners freak. I hate people when they sit at tables with hats on. It drives me nuts.
The ultimate crime.
I walked in the restaurants. I almost in the middle of Toronto. I almost want to go over and grab the guy's hat. And I said, "Don't you have any respect?"
Did your mama teach you that?
Mom was very good about manners. Yeah, very good about manners, and of course respect of others too, and giving. That's where that all came from. It's not natural. It's your environment, and that was my environment.
Well, that is a really great note to end on. I just want to say thanks again, Ray, for your candor, for your honesty, for your openness, for your sense of humor and your storytelling and sharing everything that you just shared with us in the other podcast and this one. Once again, if you haven't heard the longer podcast by Ray, where he's going to talk about malpractice and class action cases involving medical equipment errors, don't miss it. And I mean, honestly, don't miss it. There's so much to learn from it. And thanks again, everyone who's listening in. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it and share it and subscribe. And don't forget that in many jurisdictions, you can claim continuing ed credit for listening. And once again, we've announced an upcoming conference in October of this year in Calgary, the Essential Legal Nurse Consulting Conference. And be sure to tune in over the coming months as we further break down some of the issues that in healthcare that result in malpractice cases. We're going to take a second look and a deeper dive into communication because that is such a pervasive issue. We're going to take a look at the very messy business of infection control, and we're going to have a great episode about trauma-informed lawyering and about the experience of being a malpractice patient. So thank you once again. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you, Chris.
And goodbye to everyone, and take good care.